Ever get that feeling, where you keep hearing about a show everywhere, but you aren't really sure what the hype is about?
Yeah.
Well, that's us with Yellowjackets. People are buzzing about this show, and we're using this Forbes article to, well, dive in. And let me tell you, it's got some pretty high praise.
Ooh, is that right? Sounds like Yellow Jackets has made quite the impression if it's caught the attention of critics and viewers alike.
Yeah, it seems to have this whole package. Survival, secrets, psychological thrills, you name it. Just picture this. A plane crashes in the wilderness, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the survivors are a high school girls' soccer team.
Whoa, talk about a recipe for disaster. I can already see where the Lord of the Flies comparisons are coming from.
Exactly. But here's where Yellowjackets takes it up a notch. It throws in this double dose of mystery by jumping back and forth between the aftermath of the crash and the survivors' lives decades later, like solving two puzzles at the same time.
You know what I find really interesting about using that dual timeline?
hmm
It lets the show really dig into the long-term impacts of trauma. It becomes about more than just the dangers they faced in the wilderness, but those scars they carry, the ones you can and can't see, even into adulthood.
And this article dives right into that, highlighting how Yellowjackets doesn't shy away from how messy and complicated trauma can be. Like it manifests differently for each woman, shaping their relationships, their work, everything.
Absolutely. And it's not just some surface level exploration either. For example, the article draws this parallel between Shauna, who seems like she's got this perfect suburban life, and Thaisa, who's super ambitious, driven, even in politics, right?
Right.
But underneath it all, they're both still wrestling with the guilt, the fear, everything that happened all those years ago.
Okay, now I'm hooked. It's like this show has layers upon layers to unpack, and then there's the whole mystery of what actually went down out there in the wilderness.
Yeah.
The article hints at some seriously creepy stuff,
hmm
weird visions, strange rituals, almost like there's something supernatural going on.
Yeah, that's one of the things Yellow Jackets does so well, blurring those lines between reality and, well, what's real in their minds. Are they really experiencing these supernatural things, or is it all the trauma bubbling up? It's that question that keeps you on the end of your seat.
Keeps you guessing, for sure. And the article specifically called out the acting, which makes sense. This show lives and dies by how real these characters feel, because it's not just about surviving the elements, it's about surviving each other.
Couldn't agree more. And Yellow Jackets has such a strong cast. The article was especially impressed with Ella Purnell as Jackie, the team captain. She really captures that tricky balance of being charismatic but also vulnerable.
It's interesting you mentioned Jackie because the article points out how crucial her storyline in season one is to the entire narrative. Like her character really sets the stage for all the complex relationships and secrets that come out.
Yeah, Jackie's a great example of how Yellow Jackets takes these characters that seem kind of basic at first, the popular girl, the rebel, those types, and then flips the script. Like you think you know them, and then bam, it gets real, and that's where the good stuff is.
Totally. It's not just about the shock value of being stranded. It's about these characters and how they deal with this insane pressure. Which reminds me, the article talked about season two, and well, it sounds like almost everyone agrees. Season one was amazing, but season two, not so much. What's your take on that?
Ah, the dreaded sophomore slump.
I
It's like a rite of passage for TV shows. You have this amazing first season, everyone's going crazy for it, and then there's all this pressure to do it again, even better. And sometimes that pressure, well, it can lead to some stumbles along the way.
So what happened in season two then,
Yeah.
according to the article?
Well, they pointed to a few things. One was pacing. See, season one, it took its time, building up the suspense, dropping these little hints, and letting the mystery unfold naturally. But then, season two felt rushed, almost like they were trying to cram way too much into each episode.
So instead of letting the story breathe, it's like they just went full speed ahead with plot twists, afraid of boring the audience or something.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, that often does the opposite. When everything's moving a mile a minute, it's hard to actually get invested in the characters and what they're going through emotionally. The article also said that some of the storylines in season two felt kind of random, like they didn't quite fit with the main story. And for a show like Yellow Jackets, which is all about those intricate connections, that can be jarring for viewers.
Yeah, it's like they lost sight of what made the show so good in the first place. That balance of character development, the suspense, the psychological realism.
Right. And that happens a lot, not just in TV, but in anything creative. It's
Uh,
easy to get caught up trying to recreate that past success or follow the latest trends instead of trusting what made the work connect with people in the first place.
That's so true. It's like that saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
But I guess it's easy to get tempted, right? To try to make something even bigger and bolder. And in the process, you lose a bit of that magic.
It's a tough balance to strike, that's for sure. There's no magic formula, unfortunately. But Yellowjackets is an interesting example of how a show can be both captivating and frustrating at the same time.
And speaking of captivating, you know what else really stood out to me in the article? How much they love the music. I'm a total sucker for a good soundtrack. When it's done right, it can add so much to a show, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's like the secret weapon that can evoke all these emotions, build tension, even create a whole new layer of meaning. The article mentioned how Yellowjackets uses music to make those scenes where you're not sure what's real even more unsettling, more suspenseful.
It's like the music becomes this emotional guide, right?
Yeah.
Like it's telling you how to feel even when you're not sure what's going on. Are there any other shows where the music really stood out to you?
Oh, tons. Stranger Things immediately comes to mind. Those synthy 80s tracks are so evocative, so perfect for that blend of nostalgia, horror, and adventure. And then there's The Crown, which uses these grand, sweeping scores to really capture the weight and drama of the monarchy, but also those quiet moments of personal sacrifice, the emotions underneath.
Great example. It's amazing how music can just transport you, pull you deeper into the story. Okay, so back to Yellow Jackets. The article also brought up another show, From, comparing it to both Yellow Jackets and Lost. Have you ever seen it? So we were talking about From. This show, the article compared to both Yellow Jackets and Lost. Have you seen it?
I have. And it's definitely got that same kind of eerie atmosphere, that feeling of being trapped in a nightmare you can't wake up from. And like you said, it's about a group of people who are stranded after a plane crash, but they end up in this mysterious town that's cut off from the rest of the world.
Okay, so it's giving Lost vibes for sure.
Mhm.
But what about the comparison to Yellow Jackets? What makes it similar?
Well, both shows tap into this primal fear of the unknown, and they're not afraid to get under your skin a little. But with From, the horror element is even more pronounced. The article actually says it's scarier than Lost, which is saying something.
That's really saying something. I might have to check it out, especially since I'm a big Lost fan. Is there anything else that stood out to you about From? Anything viewers should know going in?
Well, the article specifically praised Harold Perrineau's performance, and he was fantastic in Lost, too, so that's high praise. He brings this intensity and vulnerability to his role, which really makes you root for him, even when things get really bleak. And believe me, they get bleak.
Sounds intense.
Yeah,
It's amazing how one show can lead you down this rabbit hole of recommendations, right? You start noticing those patterns, those themes that really draw you in.
absolutely. That's what I love about exploring different shows and movies. You start to see these connections like a whole network of stories all intertwined.
Like discovering a hidden passageway,
Yeah.
right? It leads you to a whole other world you never knew existed. But even though it's exciting to discover new shows, Yellow Jackets has really stuck with me. It's one of those shows that gets under your skin and makes you think about the characters and their choices long after you've finished watching.
I totally agree. It's so well written and acted, and it tackles some really tough questions about trauma, survival, and the dark side of human nature. The article really nailed it when they said it's a show that stays with you.
It really does make you think. If you were in their shoes, how far would you go to survive? Would you be able to live with the choices you made? It's a question none of us really want to answer.
It's a testament to the power of storytelling, how a show like Yellow Jackets can really get us thinking about these bigger questions, these what-if scenarios that we might not otherwise confront.
Exactly. Well, on that note, we'll leave our listeners with this final thought. Imagine you're in a similar situation as the characters in Yellow Jackets facing those impossible decisions, those moments where every choice has consequences. What would you discover about yourself in those moments? Would you be haunted by the experience, or could you find a way to move forward? Until next time, keep exploring.